The noise in John F. Kennedy International Airport was like a disturbed beehive. Ilara Vance stood by the terminal's glass wall, watching as her best friend Sloane slowly disappeared into the boarding line. The flight to Miami was half an hour late, but Sloane had insisted that Ilara not wait. "Go home to Rowan," she'd said, hugging her, assuring her they'd see each other in a week. Ilara was in no hurry to leave. For several months, her house had no longer felt like a home. Kalen was always late from the law firm, claiming he had urgent cases to finish. And when he was home, his mind seemed to be elsewhere. He was always distracted. And not even the news of her pregnancy had sparked the joy she expected. Maybe he's just stressed from work, she thought, stroking her belly, still barely noticeable. At her age, as a family physician, she was used to analyzing symptoms, but when it came to her relationship with her husband, her professional intuition seemed to vanish. She decided to buy a bottle of water before heading home. So she went to a coffee shop in the waiting area. And there, her world fell apart. In a corner, almost hidden behind a pillar, sat Kalen. Her husband, who the night before had told her he was flying to Chicago on business the next day, was embracing a young blonde woman in a flashy pink suit. The woman clung to him like two teenagers in love, not like mere colleagues. Ilara felt the floor sink beneath her feet. Her pulse raced. Her mouth went dry. She quickly stepped back behind the nearest pillar, hoping she hadn't been seen. Kalen was saying something to the woman while stroking her hand. She laughed, tilting her head slightly. It was Camilla. Ilara suddenly recognized the paralegal from her husband's firm, the same 5-year-old woman Kalen often mentioned in conversation. Camilla had a great idea to streamline the document flow. Camilla is brilliant. Camilla stays late working overtime. Now it was clear what they were streamlining after work. Ilara felt a wave of nausea, not from the pregnancy, but from the crushing weight of betrayal. 5 years of marriage, 1 son, and another on the way at 12 weeks. All of it meant so little to Kalen. She wanted to approach them, make a scene, demand an explanation, but something stopped her. Maybe it was her survival instinct or her professional discipline to gather all the information before acting. She moved slowly, hiding behind other passengers, close enough to hear their conversation. "Soon, everything will be settled," Kalen was saying as he caressed Camilla's cheek. "In court, we'll get everything, down to the last penny." "And what if she suspects something?" Camilla asked with concern. "Ilara is too trusting. She's a doctor, not a lawyer. She doesn't understand the complexities of estate law," he replied with a dismissive smile. "Besides, she's pregnant now, emotionally unstable. Even if she understood something, who would believe her?" Ilara gritted her teeth. Emotionally unstable. She would show him instability. And if she sees the documents, Camilla insisted. "The documents? The evidence? The will? Everything is in my red folder, and that folder is in my office." "She doesn't have access," Kalen said confidently. "After the hearing, we'll be millionaires." "And your wife? Your son? We'll get a divorce. I'll leave her just enough so she doesn't starve. I'll take the boy. A boy needs his father. And the one on the way?" Kalen shrugged. "We'll see. It might not even come to term with all this stress." Ilara felt the blood rush to her face. This man, the father of her children, was calmly planning to destroy her life, not just leave her, but rob her and take away her son. "They're calling the boarding for the Miami flight," Camilla said, standing up. "Miami, not Chicago." Another lie. Kalen kissed her on the lips. A long, passionate kiss. It had been over a year since Ilara had received a kiss like that. "In a week, we'll be free and rich," he whispered. They got up and walked toward the gate. Ilara watched them, feeling something inside her break. It wasn't her heart. That was already numb. What broke were her illusions, her trust, her faith in the family. But as the initial pain subsided, it was replaced by something different. A cold, calculating anger. Kalen had underestimated his wife. Yes, she was a doctor and not a lawyer, but she was intelligent, observant, and had an excellent memory. And above all, she had something Kalen had lost, a conscience and principles. The red folder in the office? She repeated mentally. She had a spare key at home. Kalen had given it to her for emergencies. It seemed the emergency had arrived. For the first time in half an hour, Alara managed a faint smile. Kaylin wanted to play a game. Perfect. But he had forgotten that in any game, there can only be one winner, and Alara Vance had no intention of losing. She took out her phone and called Mrs. Gable, her son's caretaker. Mrs. Gable, it's Alara. Could you stay with Rowan tonight? Something urgent has come up that I need to attend to. Yes, a very urgent matter. It was time to find out what that red folder contained. When she got home, 4-year-old Rowan greeted her at the door with a drawing of Mommy and Daddy holding hands next to a small figure. Mommy, look, it's us, the family, he said proudly. Alara knelt and hugged him. How could she explain to him that there was no family anymore, that his father had chosen another woman and was willing to take everything from them? It's beautiful, sweetie, she said, kissing his head. Where's Daddy? He said he'd bring me a toy from his work trip. What will he bring her? Alara thought bitterly. A ring, a bracelet, or maybe he's already given her a ticket to a new life. Mrs. Gable, the elderly caregiver who had helped raise Rowan since he was born, looked at her intently. Dear, you're very pale. Is something wrong? It's nothing, I'm just tired, Alara lied. I need to go to Kaylin's office. It's urgent. Can you stay with Rowan until tomorrow? Of course. But what's so urgent it can't wait for him to get back? It really can't. She gave her son dinner, put him to bed, and read him a story about a good wizard who defeated evil witches. He fell asleep smiling. If only everything were as simple as in fairy tales, she thought. At 10 p.m., Alara drove to Park Avenue, where the law firm was located. Kaylin had been a senior partner for 3 years, a position with a high salary, prestige, and respect everything she believed had given their family a comfortable life. The firm occupied 2 floors of a modern skyscraper. Kaylin's office was on the 2nd floor. In a corner of the building, large windows, mahogany furniture, leather armchairs, all solid, all inspiring confidence. She parked on a side street. The area was nearly empty. She took out the small silver key with a Scales of Justice keychain she herself had given him on their first anniversary. Justice above all, he had said then. What a cruel irony. The door opened easily. She silently climbed the marble staircase to the 2nd floor. The office smelled of leather and expensive cologne. On the desk, neat stacks of documents. In a corner, a safe. And on the wall, shelves full of binders. No red folder in sight. She turned on the desk lamp and began her search. She checked the drawers, common papers, pens, stamps. In the bottom drawer, she found a USB drive labeled Personal and pocketed it. Then she went to the filing cabinet, everything sorted alphabetically. Wills, deeds, inheritance cases, but no red folder. She looked behind the modern painting, in the safe, under the rug, until her eyes landed on a small cabinet in a corner, locked with a simple padlock. Strange, she thought. She tried several keys from Kaylin's keychain. The 3rd one fit. Inside were several red folders, perfectly aligned. Her heart pounded. The first was marked Miller, M. The second, Gallagher, W. Both contained wills leaving properties and large sums of money to Kaylin Vance. The third, Jennings, C. S. That last name was familiar. It was her great-aunt Corinne, who had died 6 months ago, childless, and had planned to leave her inheritance to her only grandniece. Opening the folder, Alara saw a will in which all of Corinne's assets, her Upper East Side apartment valued at $3.5 million, a house in the Berkshires, and her bank savings passed to a private charitable entity called the Horizon Trust. She quickly checked the incorporation papers attached at the back. Kaylin was listed as the sole trustee and beneficiary of the trust. Bastard, she whispered. He was using shell companies to hide his tracks from the Bar Association. She had seen her aunt's original will herself, where it was clearly written that all her assets were bequeathed to Alara Vance, with a signature, date, and notary seal. Now she held a very well-made forgery. She photographed every page and checked the other folders. There were 7 in total. 7 falsified wills worth over $7 million. The fraud had begun 3 years ago, just when Kaylin was promoted. Additionally, she found Kaylin's second cell phone, which she unlocked with their son's birth date. There, she read messages between Kaylin and Camilla, where they talked about deceiving elderly people, a mansion in Greenwich, buying a villa in Italy. and closing the final case, her own wife's inheritance, after which they would disappear, divorce, take the child, and move to Italy. Alara felt a surge of rage and disgust. They weren't just cheating on her, they were robbing defenseless seniors. She photographed all the messages. She opened Kaylin's laptop with the same password, their son's birth date. She found diagrams of the fraud, lists of victims, and money laundering plans. She copied everything to the USB drive. In one of the red folders, she found a petition to strip her of parental custody of Rowan, citing mental instability and inability to care for a minor. The document was dated for the next day. First, the false inheritance. Then taking her child by claiming she was mentally unfit. Camilla would take her place. That was not going to happen. She put everything back and locked the cabinet. She had proof. She knew the enemy's plan. It was time for a counterattack. She stepped out into a light drizzle. The real battle would begin in the morning. Kaylin expected an easy victory in court against his trusting wife. Instead, he was about to receive an unforgettable lesson. She stroked her belly, promising to protect her children. The next day, Alara took Rowan to daycare and informed them that only she or Mrs. Gable could pick him up. Then she requested a leave of absence from the clinic and, from home, began researching lawyers specializing in family and criminal law. She called Croft and Associates. Orrin Croft, a man in his 40s, after hearing the summary, agreed to see her in 2 hours. If all this is true, it's a very serious case. She also called a private investigator, Silas Keene, requesting information on Kaylin Vance and Camilla Thorne, especially their financial situation and possible accomplices. The standard fee was $5,000 for each complete dossier, and it would take 3 days. She agreed, paying a rush fee. Then she began contacting the affected families, like Max Miller, grandson of Martha Miller, explaining that his grandmother had been a victim of fraud and that she had proof. The calls were repeated with other relatives. The total damages exceeded $20 million. At 1 p.m., she met with Mr. Croft, who confirmed the magnitude of the fraud: embezzlement, forgery of public documents, abuse of power, at least 10 years in prison. He advised her to report it to the NYPD, organize a class action lawsuit, and file for divorce with sole custody. They will issue an international arrest warrant if he tries to flee. Alara left, relieved. The plan was in motion. At the bank, she confirmed that Kaylin had withdrawn large sums, preparing to escape, but her personal account had enough savings. At home, she analyzed the first data from the detective on Camilla Thorne. Married to Gideon Thorne, a construction engineer, they lived in a small apartment in Queens with debts and modest incomes. Gideon had no idea about his wife's activities. Another cheated spouse, Alara thought. How would he react to learning about Camilla's infidelity and criminal activities? She looked up Gideon Thorne's profile on social media. A normal 30-year-old man, pictures at work, family photos with Camilla. In the most recent ones from a month ago, they looked like a happy couple. Camilla was hugging her husband, smiling at the camera. A month later, she was planning to run away with her lover. Alara sent a private message to Gideon. "Good afternoon, I'm Alara Vance. I need to talk to you about your wife, Camilla. It's a matter that affects your family. Could we meet tonight?" The reply came in half an hour. What happened? Camilla is on a business trip, she's not back for a week. That's precisely what we need to talk about. It seems not everything is as you believe. Gideon agreed to meet at a coffee shop near his home at 7 p.m. Alara picked up Rowan from daycare, gave him dinner, and left him with Mrs. Gable. The boy asked when Daddy would be back, and Alara answered vaguely. Soon, the coffee shop was a small, cozy place with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh pastries. Gideon Thorne was already sitting at a corner table, nervously checking his watch. He was of medium height, with a kind face and worried eyes. "Alara Vance?" he asked, standing as she approached. "Yes, that's me. Thank you for agreeing to meet." They ordered coffee, and Alara got straight to the point. "Gideon, what I'm about to tell you might be a shock, but you have the right to know the truth. Has something happened to Camilla?" "In a way, yes. Your wife is having an affair with my husband, and together they are involved in a large-scale fraud." The color drained from Gideon's face. "That's impossible. Camilla wouldn't be capable." "Yes, she is." Alara took out prints of the messages between Kaylin and Camilla and the photos she had taken at the airport the day before. Gideon read in silence. His left eyelid twitched. "Since when?" he asked in a weak voice. "According to the messages, for a year. Maybe more. And the fraud? They're stealing inheritances from elderly people. Camilla helps Kaylin forge wills. In 3 years, they've stolen over $20 million. Gideon pushed the papers away and rubbed his face with his hands. "My God, I thought we were fine. She told me she was working overtime for our future. We were planning to buy a bigger apartment, go on vacation. Gideon, they were planning to disappear. They just had one last job stealing my inheritance. Then they planned to quit and move to Italy. And me? Our marriage? Camilla was going to file for divorce. In the messages, she refers to you as a burden she needed to get rid of." Gideon clenched his fists. Anger and pain appeared in his kind eyes. 3 years of marriage. I was crazy about her. I worked 2 jobs to support us, and he couldn't finish the sentence. "Gideon, I understand how painful this is for you, and for me. But we have an opportunity to get justice. What do you suggest?" "We join forces. I've already spoken with a lawyer. I've contacted the victims' families. Tomorrow, I'm filing a complaint with the NYPD. You can be a witness to the infidelity and Camilla's participation in the fraud." "And what happens then?" "Kaylin is facing a minimum of 10 years in prison. Camilla will lose her job, her reputation, and possibly go to jail as well. All the stolen money will be returned to its rightful heirs, and we can nullify our marriages on favorable terms." Gideon was silent for a long time, weighing it all. "You know," he said finally, "I consider myself a good person. I don't wish ill on anyone, not even my enemies. But what Camilla did is a betrayal. Not just to me, but to all those elderly people they robbed. So, you'll help?" "Yes, I'll help." They talked for another hour, refining the plan. Gideon, besides being decent, was practical. He agreed to monitor Camilla when she returned, record their conversations, and gather more evidence. "By the way," he said before leaving, "I have copies of all of Camilla's documents. Passport, background checks, tax returns. When we applied for the apartment loan, the bank required everything. It might be useful. I'm sure it will be. Thank you, Gideon. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I'd still be living a lie, completely clueless. And Camilla, along with your husband, would still be stealing." They exchanged numbers and agreed to stay in touch. Alara had one more ally against the traitors. When she got home, a surprise awaited her. The investigator, Silas Keene, had sent a detailed report on Kaylin and Camilla's financial situation. He had discovered that in 3 years they had bought several properties in the names of shell corporations: a condo in Scottsdale, a cabin in the mountains, a plot of land in a development on the outskirts of the city, all paid for with stolen money. He also found accounts in tax havens in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. The total savings exceeded $7 million. Kaylin and Camilla were preparing for a life of luxury abroad, but they won't get it, Alara promised herself. She went to bed late, but slept soundly. Tomorrow, the most important day would begin. Kaylin and Camilla would return from their business trip to discover that their plans had crumbled and that Alara Vance, the victim, had become the hunter. The next day, Alara woke up with the feeling that today her life would change completely. The sun was shining outside. A good sign. She had breakfast with Rowan, took him to daycare, and went to the NYPD Central Precinct. The inspector on duty listened to her story attentively. When Alara placed the folder of evidence on the table, his eyes widened. "Grand larceny," he muttered, reviewing the documents. "This looks like an entire organization. They're returning from abroad soon. If we don't act, they could escape." "Understood. I'll pass the case to Detective Valeri." He called down the hall, and a woman in her 40s, wearing a formal suit with the look of someone who doesn't play games, walked in. "What do we have?" she asked, sitting down. The inspector summarized the case. Valeri took the documents and began to study them with professional interest. "Good work," she said after 10 minutes. "Alara, where did you get such detailed material?" "I accidentally discovered my husband's plans and decided to investigate on my own. Breaking into someone else's office is a crime. I used the key my husband personally gave me, and I didn't take any documents. I only photographed them." Valeri nodded. "Technically, You're right. Besides, the public benefit of your action is clear. We'll open a case and issue arrest warrants. As soon as your husband sets foot in the country, we'll detain him. There's sufficient grounds. Alara signed the complaint and gave a detailed statement. The process took 3 hours. When she left, she felt that the law was on her side. The next stop was Mr. Croft's office. Oren already had the documents ready to file in court. A divorce petition, a request for sole custody, division of assets, and a claim for $500,000 in moral damages. Isn't that too much? With the infidelity, the attempt to steal your inheritance, and take your son, it's actually quite modest. But the courts are conservative. They rarely award such high figures, so at least we're setting a baseline. They discussed the strategy. Croft was optimistic. With this evidence, the outcome was practically assured. At 3 p.m., Alara met with representatives of the victims' families. Max Miller came with his mother, an elderly woman who could barely hold back tears. My mother-in-law wanted to leave the house to her grandson, she said. She worked her whole life, saving every penny, and that scoundrel stole it all. William Gallagher's daughter Sarah was more determined. I want that lawyer to rot in jail. My father left me an apartment and savings for my children's education. Because of Vance, my children might not be able to finish their studies. In total, 7 families gathered. The damages amounted to nearly $20 million. Croft explained the class action lawsuit process and assured them they would recover their assets. When they arrest Vance, we'll freeze his assets, apartments, country houses, bank accounts, cars. Everything will go to pay compensation. That evening, Alara received a message from Gideon. Camilla told me she's coming back tomorrow morning. I'm ready for the conversation. Good luck, Alara replied. Remember to record everything. At 10 p.m., Investigator Keene called. Alara, I have news. Your husband and his lover landed at JFK an hour ago. They're in a taxi right now. Thank you. Then, the most intense part would begin tomorrow. Alara went to bed early but struggled to sleep. Tomorrow, Kalen would discover his plan had failed. How would he react? Would he try to run, feign ignorance, or surrender? At 6:30 a.m., a call woke her. It was Kalen's number. Hello, she answered calmly. Alara, it's me. I've landed. Her husband's voice sounded normal, without guilt or worry. How was the trip? Did you like Chicago? Yeah, it was fine. Hey, I have to go to court today for your aunt's inheritance case. Remember I told you? Yes, I remember. And what's going to happen? Just formalities. The will is in order, but there's a small detail to correct. No problems. Alara smiled to herself, still lying. Kalen, can I ask you something? Sure. How's Camilla? She had a work trip too, right? The silence was too long for such a simple question. Camilla? Oh yeah, she's fine. Why? No reason. You just mention her a lot lately. She's a good employee, that's all. Well, I have to get ready. I'll see you tonight. Of course, honey. Alara hung up, smiling. Kalen still didn't know that his hearing today would turn into a monumental disaster. Detective Valeri had promised they would arrest him as soon as he arrived at the courthouse. At Ottawa. She dropped Rowan off at daycare and headed to the courthouse. She wanted to see with her own eyes the world of the man who had planned to destroy her come crashing down. The courthouse building greeted her with its usual hustle and bustle. Lawyers, plaintiffs, defendants, witnesses, all rushing around. Alara located the courtroom where the case of Corinne Jennings' inheritance would be heard. At 9:30, Kalen arrived in his best suit, a briefcase full of documents, confident and serene. Beside him walked Camilla in a discreet black dress. Her demeanor was professional, but Alara saw Kalen secretly brush her hand. We'll get the last $1 million and be free, she heard him say. Yes, free of money, of work, of reputation, Alara thought. At 10 a.m., the hearing was called. Judge Eleanor Higgins was already informed that a criminal about to flee the country was in her courtroom and needed to be arrested immediately. Kalen and Camilla were inside. Alara also entered, accompanied by Mr. Croft. Kalen saw his wife and paled. Alara? What are you doing here? Defending my rights, honey. The right to Aunt Corinne's inheritance that you plan to steal. What are you talking about? What proof? Proof that you forged the will and of your systematic fraud. That's absurd. Kaylin stood up. I am a lawyer with an impeccable reputation. Impeccable until yesterday, Alara replied calmly. Judge Higgins slammed her gavel. This hearing is suspended indefinitely, until these allegations are thoroughly investigated. Kaylin paled. He glared at Alara, grabbed his briefcase, and quickly stormed out of the courtroom, desperate to escape. Camilla followed closely behind him, but the moment they pushed through the double doors into the hallway, they froze. Detective Valeri and 3 plainclothes officers were waiting for them. Kaylin Vance, Valeri said coldly, flashing her badge. You are under arrest for grand larceny and forgery of a public document. Hands behind your back. What? You're making a mistake. Behind him, Camilla tried to turn around, but a female agent was already pushing her against the wall to handcuff her. Camilla Thorne, you are under arrest as an accomplice. I didn't do anything, she shouted. It was his idea. You can talk about that at the precinct, the agent replied indifferently. They handcuffed Kaylin. He looked at Alara with shock and incomprehension. Alara, what's happening? This is a mistake, right? There's no mistake, Kaylin. You wanted to rob me and take my son, but you miscalculated. Turns out I'm not the dumb, gullible wife you thought I was. But we're a family. The family ended when you decided to cheat on me with Camilla, and especially when you started robbing defenseless old people. They led Kaylin and Camilla out of the courtroom. Camilla was crying. Kaylin walked in silence, head bowed. The judge postponed the hearing until the circumstances were clarified. Congratulations, said Croft, shaking her hand. The first blow was a direct hit. Thanks, but this is just the beginning. There's a lot of work ahead. Leaving the courthouse, Alara felt a strange peace. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and today, she had taken the first bite. The arrest of Kaylin and Camilla was only the beginning of a cascade of revelations. Alara returned home in high spirits, though she knew the hardest part was yet to come. At noon, Gideon called. His voice sounded tired and confused. Alara, Camilla hasn't come home. I'm worried. Gideon, sit down. What I'm about to tell you is going to hurt. She told him what happened at the courthouse. Gideon listened in silence, sighing occasionally. So, they arrested her. Yes, she's in a detention center right now, along with my almost ex-husband. I filed for divorce this morning. After what he did, there's no future. And what will happen to Camilla? It depends on many things. If she cooperates with the investigation and testifies against Kaylin, she might get a suspended sentence. If she stays firm, she faces several years as an accomplice to a fraud of this magnitude. 3 to 7 years in prison. Gideon was quiet for a long time. You know. He said at last, I thought I'd feel sorry for her. But I don't. She didn't just cheat on me. She cheated all those people they robbed. Let the law handle it. Gideon, the detective will want to talk to you. Your testimony is important. Of course. I'm willing to help. In the afternoon, Alara picked up Rowan. The boy asked where Daddy was. And she answered honestly, Daddy did something bad. Now he has to answer for it. Will he come back? Not soon. Maybe he'll never come back. For now, it's just you and me. You, me, and everything is going to be okay. Rowan nodded like a little 4-year-old philosopher. Mommy, you won't leave me, right? Never. Love, Mommy will never leave you. The next day, the real work began. Detective Valeri summoned Alara for a detailed statement that lasted 4 hours. At the end, Valeri said, Alara, thanks to you, we've uncovered a huge scheme. It turns out there are more victims than we thought. How many? For now, 12 families. The total damages exceed $35 million. Alara was stunned. Her husband's crime was even bigger than she had imagined. And the accomplices? Besides Camilla Thorne, we've identified 2 more. The real estate appraiser, Greg Hughes, and the real estate agent, Rachel Zane. They helped manage the operations with the stolen properties. Will you arrest them too? We already arrested them last night. After the interrogation, Alara went straight to see her lawyer. Croft greeted her with good news. The court had accepted the divorce petition, And given the circumstances, the process would be quick. And custody, too. Kalen would lose his parental rights due to the arrest and the criminal proceedings. As for the properties, all of Kalen's assets were frozen. Apartments, country houses, bank accounts, cars, all would go to compensate the victims. She would receive half of the non-criminally linked marital assets, the apartment where they lived, and financial compensation for her share in other properties. As for her aunt's inheritance, the false will had been declared void, and she would receive everything that was hers. The Upper East Side apartment, the house in the mountains, the bank deposits. Alara mentally calculated and realized that with the inheritance, she would be a woman with enough to live comfortably. With the stress of the last few days, she had almost forgotten about the pregnancy. Suddenly, she felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. "Oren, excuse me. I have to go. I don't feel well." "Of course, take care." On the way home, the pain intensified. She stopped at a pharmacy, but suddenly felt dizzy, and everything went black. Ilara woke up in a hospital, surrounded by doctors and nurses, and there she learned that she had lost the baby. The pregnancy had been terminated. Ilara wept. When she calmed down, she called the caregiver and asked her to pick up Rowan from daycare and bring him to her house, explaining what had happened. She spent 3 days in the hospital. Upon returning home, she decided she had to move on. She had Rowan, who needed a happy, healthy, and loving mother. An hour later, the caregiver brought her son. Alara hugged him and decided not to tell him yet that his little sibling was no longer in Mommy's belly. That night, Investigator Keene called. "Alara, I have news about your husband's financial dealings." "I'm listening." "We've found 3 more accounts in tax havens. The total stolen money exceeds $45 million. Kalen prepared his escape thoroughly. Can that money be recovered? We're in contact with international agencies. The process is complex, but there's a chance." The next day, Alara received an unexpected call. It was Camilla Thorne from the detention center. "Ilara, it's Camilla. They gave me one call." "I'm listening. I want to tell everything. Testify against Kalen. But I have one condition. Which is, I want to see you. There are things you need to know." "About what?" "About what he planned to do to you and your son. It's much worse than you think." Alara agreed to see her. Curiosity outweighed her repulsion. The detention center was a dreary building in an industrial park. The visiting room had bare walls, a table, 2 chairs, and bars on the window. Camilla looked terrible. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, her eyes red from crying. There was no trace of that confident young woman. "Thanks for coming," she said in a weak voice. "I'm listening. Camilla, I want you to know I never wanted to hurt you. Kalen told me you two hadn't loved each other for a long time, that divorce was inevitable, and I believed him. I was in love, blind, and stupid. He promised he'd marry me, that we'd buy a house in Italy." Her voice broke. "Children. I'm pregnant, Alara. With Kalen's child. I found out last week." Ilara felt a pang in her heart. He was going to have a child with his mistress, while hers had not survived. "Why do you think it's Kalen's? My husband and I were careful because I was going to leave him for yours. And what else did you want to tell me about Kalen's plans? He wasn't just planning to divorce you. He was planning..." Camilla hesitated. "What was he planning?" "To kill you. After you gave birth. To make it look like an accident or postpartum depression." Alara felt her blood run cold. "Are you kidding? He has contacts in the criminal world. People who know how to eliminate obstacles. Kalen said it was simpler that way, no dividing assets in a divorce." "And you just stayed quiet?" "I thought he wasn't serious, that it was just talk." "And when did you realize he was serious?" "When he showed me pictures of these people and explained how they worked. Then I got scared, but it was too late. I was already his accomplice." Alara was in shock. So, he didn't just plan to rob her, he planned to kill her, and she had been saved by a miracle, by discovering him at the airport. "Camilla, do you have proof?" "Messages with those people. Kalen thought he deleted them all, but I took screenshots. I saved them on a USB drive." "Where is it?" "In my apartment, in a little pink box on my dresser." Why are you telling me this? Because I realized Kalen is a monster. He used me just like he used you and everyone else. And when he didn't need me anymore, he would have thrown me away too. And your husband, Gideon? Gideon is a good man. I was an idiot to betray him. Now I want to at least redeem some of my guilt. What do you want in return? Tell Gideon I'm sorry. And let him know the truth about the baby. After seeing Camilla, Alara went straight to Detective Valeri. The new information changed the case completely. A contract killing? Valeri asked. Are you sure? Camilla is willing to testify and has proof. Then this is no longer just fraud. It's organized crime. We need to mount an additional operation. Valeri immediately organized a search of Camilla's apartment. Gideon let them in and showed them where the USB drive was. And there, they indeed found Kalen's messages with two individuals, Mick Davies and Leo Russo, men with criminal records. We need to solve the wife problem radically, Kalen had written. After she gives birth, she's depressed. A suicide wouldn't be surprising. Understood. Payment $200,000. Half up front, half after, Davies replied. Agreed. Alara read these messages, feeling a chilling terror. They weren't just cheating her. They planned to erase her from the world with the same coldness a normal person plans a vacation. We need to arrest Davies and Russo, Valeri said. Do you have information on them? No, but I can ask Investigator Keene. He has contacts in the underworld. Keene responded quickly. In 2 hours. He sent a dossier. Mick Davies, a hitman with 2 murder convictions. Leo Russo, his partner, an expert in faking accidents. Professionals. If their plan had succeeded, Valeri said, you wouldn't have suspected a thing, and in a few months, you would have been the victim of an accident. That night, Alara met with Gideon. He looked sad, but firm. Did Camilla send any message? He asked. She asks for your forgiveness, and wants you to know she's pregnant. Gideon paled. With his child? Yes, according to her, you two were careful. She was not. And what happens to the baby now? That's her decision. But if she has it, she'll raise it alone. Kalen will be in prison for a long time, and I can't forgive her after all this. That's your right, Gideon. No one will judge you. Gideon also wanted to start a new life, free of lies and betrayal. He had also filed for divorce. The next day, Davies and Russo were arrested. A search of their premises uncovered weapons, false documents, and messages from other clients. It turned out Kalen was just one of many clients for the group. This is becoming a federal case, Valeri said. They'll probably transfer it to the main office. And what about Kalen? They'll add attempted murder to the fraud charges. He's no longer facing 10 years, but much more. Alara felt a strange satisfaction. Justice was prevailing completely. Kalen would get what he deserved for all his crimes. A week after the arrest of Davies and Russo, the investigation escalated. Alara received a summons, but she wasn't expected in Valeri's office, but in a large conference room. At a long table sat several people in suits. In the center, a man in his 50s with decorations on his uniform. Alara, I'd like you to meet Director Marcus Sterling, head of the Organized Crime Unit, Valeri said. Please, have a seat. What we are about to discuss, Sterling said, must be kept in the strictest confidence. We have some questions for you. Go ahead, I'm listening. Thanks to you, we've uncovered a major criminal network. But we believe your husband is not the leader, but just an executor. You mean he has a boss? Someone who gives him information about potential victims, organizes the sale of stolen properties, and provides protection? Alara frowned. Kalen's messages didn't mention any boss. And where does this information come from? Camilla Thorne gave an additional statement. She says Kalen regularly met with a certain Uncle Vince. He would give him a cut of the profits and receive instructions on new targets. And who is this Uncle Vince? We don't know yet. Kalen refuses to talk. But we have leads. Sterling pulled out a folder with photos. Security cameras caught your husband meeting with an older man near a restaurant on the Upper East Side. The last meeting was 2 days before the trip to Miami. In the photos, Alara saw Kalen with a man with gray hair and an expensive coat. His face was turned, but his silhouette was visible. Does he look familiar? No, I've never seen him. Did Kalen ever talk on the phone in front of you with someone he called Uncle Vince? Alara tried to remember. Lately, Kaylin had been talking a lot on the phone in another room, but she didn't recall that name. I don't remember any conversation like that. Understood. Then, another question. Kaylin had access to the notary database, but the information on private clients' income, properties that came from somewhere else. Where exactly? For the robberies, he had a source in the IRS or the banking system. Someone was passing him data on wealthy elderly people. Alara thought about it. It was true. How did Kaylin know marital status, heirs, the size of savings? Could this Uncle Vince be the source? It's very likely. That's why we need your help. In what way? We want to arrange a meeting between Kaylin and this person under our control. But for that, Kaylin has to contact him himself. And why would he do that? If we promise him a reduced sentence in exchange for cooperation, Sterling paused. If he thinks he can escape, you mean you're going to let him out of jail? Under our control, of course. Kaylin will try to contact his boss and ask for help. We'll intercept the contact and get to Uncle Vince. The risk is minimal. Kaylin will be under constant surveillance. At the first real attempt to flee, we'll rearrest him. Alara considered it. It was risky, but tempting. Dismantling the entire network meant protecting future victims. All right. What do I have to do? Visit your husband in jail. Tell him you're willing to forgive him and help him. Maybe then he'll share information about his boss. But I've filed for divorce. Tell him you've changed your mind, that love is stronger than resentment. The important thing is that you convince him of your sincerity. Alara agreed. The next day, she went to the facility where Kaylin was being held. Her ex-husband looked terrible, unshaven, thin, in a prison uniform. Nothing of his arrogance remained. Alara, I can't believe it. You came. Yes, I came. She sat across from him. How are Rowan and the baby? Forgive me. I was an idiot. Camilla manipulated me. The money blinded me. They're fine, Alara lied. I've been thinking a lot about us, about our family. And what conclusion did you reach? That I don't want to destroy our family over your mistakes. Yes, you were wrong, but we can fix it. Kaylin's eyes lit up with hope. Really? Can you forgive me? I can, on one condition. Tell me the whole truth about your accomplices, about who helped you, who gave you information. Maybe the investigation will be more lenient and reduce your sentence. Kaylin hesitated. Alara, it's complicated. There are people it's better not to bother. What people? Influential? Connected to the government? If I talk, it's not just me who will suffer. Kaylin, you're facing life in prison. It can't get any worse. Oh, it can. People like me don't last long in prison, especially if they find out I've ratted on the wrong people. Who are you talking about? Kaylin looked around to make sure the guard wasn't listening. Uncle Vince. Vincent Moretti, chief clerk of the New York Surrogates Court. He runs the whole operation. What exactly does he do? He controls the probate system. He's the first to see death certificates, unresolved estates, and lists of heirs. He gives me the targets before the information goes public, and he also provides protection. If any relative gets suspicious and files a claim, he buries the paperwork. In exchange for what? Half the profits. Moretti takes the largest share, but he also runs the biggest risk. And now? Now he probably wants to get rid of me. I know too much about his connections, his offshore accounts, his shell companies. Kaylin, what if the investigation guarantees your safety? What safety? Moretti has connections in the prosecutor's office, in the courts, in the prison. He can reach me anywhere. Alara understood she had the key piece. She just had to use it well. What if you escape? Escape where? I'm in a detention center. But anything can happen. A transfer to court, a medical checkup. Even if I escape, where would I go without money? Without documents? If I can see Uncle Vince, he'll help me, if I'm still useful to him. Moretti would only help me hide if I'm of use to him. And now I'm a risk and a burden. But what if you offer him something valuable? Like what? Information about the investigation. What they know and what they don't. Kaylin thought about it. Maybe you're right. If I tell him how the investigation is going and warn him of the danger, He might help me flee the country. Try to contact him from here. All calls are monitored. Only through a lawyer or by passing a note to an inmate. Kaylin looked at her suspiciously. Alara, are you sure you're on my side? You're not working for the investigation? Alara feigned being hurt. Kaylin, I'm your wife, the mother of your children. Of course, I'll always be on your side. Sorry. I think I'm going crazy in these walls. I understand. The important thing is we find a way to get you out of here. Kaylin believed in Alara's sincerity and promised to try to contact Moretti. Alara left with a sense of victory. In the car, she immediately called Director Sterling. Marcus, I have a name. Vincent Moretti, Chief Clerk of the Surrogates Court. Moretti. Wow. We've suspected his corruption for a long time, but we had no proof. Now we will. Kaylin is willing to contact him. Yes. Excellent. Let's start the operation. The operation to capture Moretti was codenamed Operation Vendetta. Director Sterling personally supervised every stage. Alara had been crucial, but her active participation ended there. From now on, it's too dangerous, Sterling explained. Moretti is a serious adversary. He has connections, money, power. If he finds out you're working with us, he might try to eliminate you. But I want to see the end of this case. You've already done the most important part. You've led us to the boss. The rest is a job for professionals. Alara agreed to stay on the sidelines but asked to be kept informed. Sterling promised to update her frequently. 3 days later, they simulated Kaylin's escape. During a transfer to court, the prison van had an accident. In the chaos, Kaylin escaped. In reality, he was under the control of agents. Kaylin ran and borrowed a phone from a student, pretending to call an ambulance for an elderly person who had fallen on the corner. From memory, he dialed Moretti's number. The agents followed him at a distance. Vince. It's Kaylin. Are you crazy? Calling me directly like that? I have no choice. I escaped. But they'll find me soon. I need help. What help? I'm burned. Documents, money, a way out of the country. I have information about the investigation. What information? Do they know about you? They're looking for Uncle Vince. They're close to locating you. There was a long silence. Where are you now? In the city with a borrowed phone. Then I'll hide in the basement of an abandoned building. 15 Hester Street, back basement. Wait there. Someone will come for you in an hour. The call disconnected. Kaylin returned the phone to the bewildered student and went to the designated location, followed by the agents. An hour later, a black Audi with tinted windows arrived at the building. 2 men in leather jackets got out and entered the basement. Vance, one shouted. I'm here, he answered from the darkness. Let's go. The boss is waiting. They put him in the car and drove off. 3 teams followed them, alternating cars and motorcycles. They couldn't lose the target. The Audi stopped next to a luxury restaurant, the Gilded Lion, on the Gold Coast. They went through the back entrance to a private office on the 2nd floor. Behind a large desk sat Vincent Moretti, a man in his 60s, with gray hair and an icy gaze. Beside him, 2 bodyguards. Well, Kaylin, Moretti said with irritation. What a mess you've made. Vince, it's not my fault. My wife turned out to be smarter than I thought. Your wife is a minor problem. The problem is that you got caught, and that means you're dragging all of us down. But I haven't said anything. I've been quiet as a tomb. For now. And what happens when you're facing a life sentence? You'll sing like a canary. I'll keep quiet. I swear. Kaylin, you've disappointed me. I invested a lot in you. I gave you the chance to make millions, and you've ruined it over a woman. Give me a chance to fix it. Help me leave the country. I'll disappear forever. Moretti smiled contemptuously. Abroad? Do you take me for a fool? In a month, you'd sell me to foreign special services in exchange for asylum. No, I'm not a traitor. Everyone is a traitor, Kaylin. When life is at stake, everyone betrays. You know, I have a more radical idea. Which is, you die today in an escape attempt. Dead men don't testify. Kaylin paled. Vince, you can't do that. I can, and I will. Mason Trent, he told the bodyguards. Take him to the woods. Let him be breakfast for the wild dogs. The bodyguards advanced. Kaylin backed away. Wait, I have important information. What information? About the investigation. They're planning an operation against you. They know about your accounts. How do you know? My wife told me. She's collaborating with the investigation. Moretti turned sharply. What did you say? Your wife works for the police? Yes. She found out about your plans. They plan to arrest you tomorrow. You're lying. No. Check it if you want. At that instant, the office door burst open. Agents in bulletproof vests stormed in. NYPD? Hands up! Moretti tried to draw a weapon but was immediately subdued. His bodyguards didn't resist. They knew they were finished. Vincent Moretti, you are under arrest for organizing a criminal group, corruption, and participation in fraud. Moretti looked at Kaylin with pure hatred. You betrayed me in the end, you bastard. I didn't want to. You'll rot in jail, you snitch. Director Sterling himself cuffed Moretti. The game's over, Vince. We know about your offshore accounts, your shell companies, your bribes. There's enough for several life sentences. The arrest of Moretti was a bombshell. A corrupt official, the mastermind of a criminal scheme that had stolen over $1 billion from the state. Cases like this made front-page news. Alara saw it on television. Kaylin and Moretti in handcuffs, images of the raids, expert commentary. Justice had triumphed. That night, Director Sterling called. Alara, the operation was a success. Thanks to you, we've dismantled the largest corruption scheme in recent years. And what happened to the other accomplices? All arrested. Moretti, his clerks at the courthouse, the real estate agents, the appraisers, the entire network has fallen. How many years will they face? Many. The court will decide. As for compensation, all assets are frozen. The victim families will receive full compensation. A week later, the divorce hearing for Alara and Kaylin was held. The process took half an hour. Given the circumstances, the court saw no reason to maintain the marriage. Leaving the courthouse, Alara felt light. A dark chapter of her life had ended. A new beginning lay ahead. Gideon Thorne had also divorced. Camilla signed all the documents without resistance. She was sentenced to 3 years, thanks to her cooperation with the investigation. She decided to have the baby. 6 months passed since Kaylin's arrest. Alara's life had completely changed. She received her aunt's inheritance, sold the apartment, and bought a large house in a suburb of New York, a quiet place with a garden where Rowan, now 5, could play. She worked at a small, private clinic, good income, flexible hours, and plenty of time for her son. Rowan adapted quickly to the new life. Children, in general, adapt easily to change. He went to a new daycare, made friends in the neighborhood, and stopped asking about his father. Mommy, will I have a new daddy? He asked one evening during dinner. I don't know, honey. Would you like one? I want one who is good and won't hurt us. If we ever have a new dad, I assure you he will be good. Alara wasn't lying. After everything she had been through, she had become very cautious with men. Trust had to be earned. Gideon Thorne began to visit her house frequently. At first, he came for practical things. Fixes, repairs, helping with whatever was needed. Then the visits became more frequent and less professional. Gideon turned out to be a wonderful man, honest, reliable, hard-working, and he connected with Rowan from the first moment. The boy was drawn to him as if he sensed his sincerity and kindness. Uncle Gideon, can you be my dad? Rowan asked one day. Gideon blushed and looked at Alara. That's not up to me to decide, Rowan. That's something adults decide. But I want you to be my dad. You're good. That night, when Rowan was asleep, Alara and Gideon talked in the kitchen over coffee. Alara, I have to tell you something, he began hesitantly. I'm listening. I love coming here. I love being with you and Rowan. I feel at home. I like your company too. I think. He stopped. Gideon, just say it. I'm in love with you. I know it might sound strange. We've both been through a betrayal, but I think we can overcome it. Alara was silent, measuring her words. She liked Gideon too, but after Kaylin, she was afraid to open her heart again. Gideon, I need time to think. Of course. I'm in no hurry. I just wanted you to know how I feel." They saw each other for 3 more months before Alara agreed to a serious relationship. Gideon was patient, understanding what she had been through, and never pressured her. Their wedding was simple, with only close friends. Mr. Croft also attended. Over time, he had become not just her lawyer, but a true friend. "Alara, you are incredibly brave," he said in a toast. "Few women are capable of fighting with such mastery for justice. You are an inspiration." Director Sterling sent a telegram, "Wishing you all the happiness. Your courage uncovered a massive criminal scheme. You are a true hero." That night, the newlyweds were alone. Rowan was asleep. Alara and Gideon sat on the terrace, looking at the stars. "Are you happy?" Alara asked. "What do you mean?" "For tying your life to a woman with a past like mine. Alara, your past is what shows how strong you are. You didn't break. You didn't become bitter. You didn't give up. On the contrary, you fought until the end. There are very few women like that, and you're not afraid I'll uncover something again?" she joked. "I'm terrified," Gideon replied seriously. "That's why I'll always be honest with you. Deceiving you would hurt me more than anything else." They laughed. In the year they had known each other, Gideon had never given her a reason to doubt him. He was an open book, with no secrets, no double lives. The trial of Kaylin, Moretti, and their accomplices was widely covered by the media. They called it the trial of the century and a victory for justice. Alara attended every session as a victim and witness. Seeing Kaylin again was painful but necessary. That story had to be closed. Kaylin was unrecognizable. He had lost weight, his hair had turned gray, and his eyes had lost their spark. Nothing of the arrogant lawyer remained. In his testimony, he tried to justify himself several times. "I didn't want to hurt my wife. I was confused. They influenced me." "Influenced by whom?" the prosecutor asked. "By Moretti. He forced me into the scheme. He threatened me. And the attempted murder of your wife? Did he force you to do that too?" "I wasn't going to kill her. Those were just words. We have messages with the hitman. You paid a $100,000 advance." Kaylin fell silent. There was no point in justifying himself anymore. The evidence was overwhelming. Moretti, on the other hand, remained more dignified. He didn't justify himself, didn't blame anyone, remained silent, or answered in monosyllables. "Do you admit your guilt?" the judge asked in part. "In what, exactly?" "In corruption. The rest? Let the court decide." The trial lasted 3 months. During that time, dozens of witnesses were questioned, and hundreds of documents were reviewed. The sentence was harsh. Vincent Moretti was sentenced to life in prison. Kaylin Vance to 31 years. Camilla Thorne to 3 years. Leaving the courthouse, Alara felt relief. At last, the story was over. Kaylin would never cheat, steal, or betray again. Outside, Gideon was waiting with Rowan. "How did it go?" Gideon asked, hugging his wife. "It's over. He got 31 years. That's a long time. It's fair. For a crime like that and a murder plot, it should be more." "And how do you feel?" Alara thought about it. What did she really feel? Joy, satisfaction, pity? Peace, she finally answered. Justice was served. Now we can move on. That night at home, they celebrated the end of the trial with a simple family celebration. They toasted with a glass of red wine to their new life. In just over a year, everything had changed. From a cheated wife, Alara had become a happily married woman. From a victim to a hero. From someone who was almost robbed and killed, to someone who brought justice to many families. 5 years had passed since Kaylin's arrest. During that time, Alara's life had completely stabilized. She continued to work. Her reputation as a doctor was impeccable. Patients appreciated her professionalism and humanity. And her family grew. 3 years ago, she and Gideon had a daughter, Anna. She became the center of the universe. Rowan adored his little sister and helped his parents care for her. Now we have a big family, Gideon would say, looking at the children at the table, just like I always dreamed. Alara was also happy. After so many trials, she valued the warmth of home even more. Loyalty, the simple happiness of motherhood. Kalen was serving his sentence in a maximum security prison. In 5 years, he never wrote, called, or tried to see his son. Rowan had almost forgotten his biological father. For him, his father was Gideon. "Where is my real dad?" he asked one morning. "He lives very far away," Alara replied. "He did something bad, and now he's paying for it. Will he come back?" "Not soon. And even if he does, we won't have contact with him." "Why?" "Because he hurt our family. And you have to stay away from people who hurt you." Rowan nodded like a little philosopher. Children understand more than adults think. Camilla served her sentence. She gave birth in prison, and the baby was placed in her older sister's care until her release. Afterward, she took her child and moved to another city. According to rumors, she eventually got married. Alara was no longer interested in her fate. That chapter was completely closed. Moretti was given another sentence for trying to bribe the prison administration. The victim families received full compensation. Many remained friends with Alara, grateful for her help. On her birthday, Max Miller came with his wife, Sarah Gallagher, with her children. They were no longer mere acquaintances, but true friends. "You saved our family," said Max's mother. "If it weren't for you, we would have lost the house our grandmother left us." "I was just defending myself," Alara replied, and helping others came naturally. Mr. Croft was also a frequent visitor. They were united not only by a professional friendship, but a personal one. "Alara, you changed my life," he confessed once. "Working on your case showed me that law can be not just a business, but a service to justice." And what changed? "Now I take cases not just from wealthy clients. I help ordinary people who have been victims of scammers." That's wonderful. It means our story brought something good, not just for our family. Every now and then, Director Sterling would call to ask about the family. "How are you, Alara?" he'd say. "Very well, Marcus. Living quietly, raising the kids, and no crime stories. Not anymore. Thank God. What a shame. You'd make a great detective." "Thanks, but I prefer healing people to catching criminals." On the 5th anniversary of Kalen's arrest, the family went to their country house. They spent weekends and holidays there, by the river, receiving guests and organizing family gatherings. "Mommy, tell me the story of the bad uncle," asked Anna, now 3, sitting on Alara's lap. "What bad uncle?" "The one who wanted to take our house." The children knew a general version, without frightening details, adapted for them. "Once upon a time, there was a bad uncle who tricked people," Alara began. "He stole their houses and their money, and he wanted to steal our house too. And what did Mommy do? Mommy found out his plans and told the police. And the police caught the bad uncle? Yes, they caught him and put him in jail. And he's not getting out? Not soon. And when he does, we'll live somewhere else. And Daddy Gideon will still be with us." "Of course, sweetie. Daddy Gideon will always be with us." Anna, satisfied, went to play with her brother. Alara followed her with her gaze, thinking about how life had changed. 5 years ago, she was the unhappy wife of a con man, ignorant of her husband's double life. Now she was a happy mother of 2, a successful doctor, and the beloved wife of a good man. Gideon came over, hugged her, and sat beside her. They sat in silence, holding hands, each with their own thoughts. In 5 years, they had learned to value the simple joys: family dinners, children's laughter, late-night talks, plans for the future. Somewhere, Kalen was serving his sentence, thinking about how foolishly he had lost everything. Camilla was raising a child in another city, trying to forget the past. Moretti was spending his last days in a cell. And Alara had built a new life on the ruins of the old one, without lies, without betrayal, without fear, with love, trust, and faith in justice.